BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Andrew Petrie. This is the Scottish Football Podcast, and we're almost at the finish line. On Sunday, Barry Ferguson finally ended his Ibrox ignominy as his side ended their dreadful run of home form, beating Aberdeen 4-0.
And in it goes for number 4. And Rangers have doubled their goal tally from the last 3 months of home games in one half of football here.
An impressive second half display swept the Dons aside. On Saturday, St Johnstone held the Grim Reaper off for one more day.
Goal, St Johnstone! What a goal, this could be huge. They're not down and out yet. It's St Johnstone 2, Ross County 1.
And there's also more rumours swirling about the destination of Derek McInnes. Further down the leagues, it's been an intense weekend in the playoffs.
Yeah, the resistance has been broken. Stenhousemuir defended really well, but Airdrie have finally found that opportunity.
And it's been another interesting day at the top and bottom of the SWPL.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Well, before I introduce our guests, I'll tell you that I saw one of them last Sunday on Great Western Road, walking with Cy Ferry, wearing a rather large pair of what looked like leopard print parachute pants. Was it A, Scottish football writer Stephen McGowan, or B, former Celtic, St Johnstone and Dundee man Cillian Sheridan? Which one of you wants to own up to that?
I'm absolutely not guilty. Appalled by the idea, frankly.
Were they leopard print, Cillian?
A lot of people have seen those trousers now.
I mean, hey, if you can pull them off, you can pull them off. It was quite something. Right?
Don't tell me pulled them off in the middle of the street.
It might have been better.
Right, we'll quickly move aside from that mental image. We'll start at Ibrox, where for the first time since the 2nd of February, Rangers won a home game. A quite incredible fact, really, but they did it in style eventually. Stephen, a pretty turgid first half, but a superb second. What did you make of the performance, and how important was it for Barry Ferguson to get that monkey off his back?
I think Barry Ferguson said there was a lot of pressure going into that game just because of the poor home form. I think it's slightly surprising because you would have expected Aberdeen to be the team who had the most to play for. I mean, they are going for third place, the likelihood of Europa Conference League group stage football, and yet in the second half they fell to bits. Defending was really abysmal, but Rangers had a clinical edge. I think the only disappointment for Barry Ferguson will be they didn't score more goals against a pretty bereft Aberdeen defence. It was 4 going on 6 or 7 in that second half. Certainly after Václav Černý had the space of a bus to try to run through the defence and put Rangers ahead. So yeah, a really comprehensive win for Rangers, a really worrying defeat for Aberdeen.
And Cillian, it's been said before, I think, but does Rangers' poor run of form at home under Barry Ferguson, I know it's ended today, but is that going to be the main sticking point when it comes to, whether it be the new owners or the current owners deciding on who the next manager or head coach is going to be?
I mean, I don't think it's helping any case for him to get the job. There hasn't really been that big of an upturn in form between him and Clement. I thought the game today was pretty poor. Quality was pretty poor from both teams. Like Stephen was saying, Aberdeen's defending was crazy for some of the goals. Fair play, Rangers finished the chances that they get, and they still have to create them. But I just thought, even like you could see from the celebrations, even like there wasn't really any celebrations. It was almost like it was. I think they know how bad of a season they've had, and I haven't really seen much of that big of a change in how they play or anything. More so in what's coming out from the club, maybe in terms of like afterwards interviews after games and stuff like that, kind of like maybe spinning things differently. But apart from that, I don't really see that much of an upturn.
And you mentioned kind of how poor Aberdeen were there. Stephen, you mentioned it as well. That second half was just absolutely dreadful. Jimmy Cillian did make changes to the starting 11 and then brought Kevin Nisbet and Papi Gay on at half time. I know it's a busy match week for them, but how much momentum have they lost before this Scottish Cup final in just a few weeks' time?
Well, it's not going to get any easier. I mean, they're playing Celtic at Petrie on Wednesday night. I suppose their best hope there would be that Brendan Rodgers does make a few changes, that he brings in players like Johnny Kenny or Paulo Bernardo, if that's any consolation for Aberdeen, and just maybe dials it down a bit in preparation for the Cup final and for Trophy Day next weekend. But yeah, I mean, I think if that race for third place, I mean, Hibernian are away at St Mirren as well, that's a difficult place to go for any team right now. So, still all to play for there. I mean, I think Aberdeen have what the D United in the final weekend, who seem to have fallen off a bit of a cliff. So, you wouldn't take anything for granted, but it's not a great feeling of momentum around Aberdeen. They've been okay in the league recently, they've steadied the ship. But yeah, Celtic at home on Wednesday night gives them a bit of an issue. 3 points behind, not done, but not great either.
So I'll ask you both to then stick your necks out. Who are you backing for third place? Hibs, Aberdeen, maybe even United?
I think Hibs have it, and Hibs kind of have it, so not sewn up obviously yet, but I think they're firmly in the driving seat for it. And I even think Aberdeen could be in danger because Dundee United can still catch Aberdeen. No,
They can, yeah.
I don't think if you're Aberdeen, you don't want to go into the last game of the season away to Dundee United, where Dundee United are playing for a chance to potentially nick fourth place. That's I think kind of today was maybe a chance for Aberdeen to get, like, even if it was a point, it would have been a massive point in terms of kind of like relaxing them in that fourth position.
It's a funny one, isn't it? Because you can either have Jimmy Cillian sitting with a Scottish Cup in the cabinet and a third place finish, or you could see him with no trophies, fifth place, and people saying he's under real pressure to go off to a flyer next season. It's a bit of a tightrope for him right now, and it's difficult to see which way he's going to go.
Well, the thing that might be their saving grace is Dundee United in that performance against St Mirren on Saturday. I think Jim Goodwin admitted it. It looked like his side had really run out of legs. How worrying, I guess, is that to hear at the start of a week that has 3 games, Cillian?
Maybe it's the best time for it to happen to them, where he can come in and kind of, they kind of know, like, that performance. I think he came out and said it after, that they just weren't good enough, that St Mirren deserved to win. And I think kind of just getting that little kick before having such a big week might just give them a little bit of almost like a backhanded boost to them, where they know, like, that there's still a chance for them to kind of finish the season with. Although I think top 6 is still a big achievement for them for coming straight up. The fact that they could potentially finish fourth and get one of the European places, I think it should be quite a big incentive for them.
And I don't want to do St Mirren a disservice there either. That's 2 wins and a draw for them in the split so far. Making that late charge to the back post, looking for a European place. Stephen, do you reckon they can do it?
You wouldn't rule it out. I mean, you look at that the fixtures there. They've got Hibs Wednesday night, tricky one. I think Stephen Roberts' team just keep exceeding expectations. They keep confounding people, don't they? Every time you think they've hit a glass ceiling, they come back and they go again with a hammer. So I wouldn't entirely rule out 2 points behind in D United, heading into what is a fairly fascinating midweek and final weekend of games. So yeah, I think they'll fancy their chances.
Well, Stephen Robinson would probably have been on the shortlist when Hearts were drawing up new managers, but it looks like Derek McInnes is going to be their man. The decision seemingly made to approach McInnes and Kilmarnock. That's going to happen on Monday. Our chief sports writer Tom English confirming that news. Stephen, it has seemed for a while that Hearts really want McInnes. Do you think they're going to get that deal done? Are you surprised that he was the one that they seem to have chosen?
Not surprised. I think he is the manager with the right profile, with the right record, right experience. There was a board meeting at Hearts on Friday afternoon. I think there was some divergent views amongst the board about who they should be going for. But equally, I think McInnes is the right choice for me. I think he just has the right gravitas for where they're at. I think the big question there is going to be, obviously, they're going down very much a data-driven road. Now, Derek is a manager, isn't he? He's a manager in the oldest sense of the term. So there'll need to be a bit of a compromise there between him and between the club. But I think if you give him an opportunity to go to a club of the stature of Hearts, where they're bringing in investment from Tony Bloom, with Jamestown Analytics taking on a lot of the recruitment, I think you'll find that irresistible. I think there's a bit of an inevitability to this one now, actually.
I really think that's interesting what you said, that word compromise between kind of Derek McInnes, the more traditional kind of approach to managing a football club. Cillian, I think you know Derek McInnes quite well. You played under him at St Johnstone. Like Stephen says, do you think that's going to be an irresistible offer to him, even if he has to give up some of the control that he's maybe used to when managing a club?
Yeah, no, that's exactly the same thing I was thinking when it kind of, as it looks like it's more likely that he's going to go there. The big thing I thought was kind of the whole recruitment issue, where I feel like Derek McInnes has always been a manager where he'd pick a lot of his own players. He'll pick players based off kind of guys he knows and has played against, and like characters about how they are and stuff like that. So it'd be interesting to see how that kind of merges with the whole analytics and data side of recruitment. And that was probably the biggest stumbling block, I thought, for him getting the Hearts job. I thought that with all that analytics and everything, that they might have went down more like a head coach kind of role person, where although maybe that Derek McInnes wants that. Maybe would like to have kind of a little bit of weight off his shoulders, where he can just go and just coach and manage and kind of forget about all the recruitment issues, that an extra workload that would bring to him.
I just thought it was a really interesting choice of words, Andrew, after the game when he spoke to Chick Young, where he said there'd been no club-to-club contact, which I thought was a very carefully chosen choice of words, which suggested that there may have been some back-channeling in the background. But yeah, you would imagine that'll move on in the next 24, 48 hours. I think by the middle of this week, towards the end of this week, Hearts will have a much clearer idea of where they stand.
I felt like he sounded a bit impatient about it all. Almost like as if trying to almost force them to actually go and meet and discuss it and kind of try and get it done.
That's really interesting. And I think the other thing is, obviously, we've only got kind of a couple of days left of this season. If Hearts are to get a deal agreed, is there a chance that he comes in before kind of next Saturday, or do you think he will wait out the season with Kilmarnock and then get his foot straight in the door as soon as the season's ended?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the answer to that. I don't really think anyone knows the answer to that, because there's got to be a negotiation process. We don't know if there's a clause in there, how much it's going to cost. I don't think Kilmarnock will be massively difficult to deal with. I think they'll appreciate the job he's done. But only Billy Bowie and Phyllis McLeish can answer that question. I think, as I say, by midweek we'll have a better idea of where we stand.
And Cillian, just in terms of personality, like I say, you've worked with Derek McInnes before. A lot has been made of the personality of the next Hearts manager. Does it need to be different to Neil Critchley, who was perhaps not the big character that perhaps Hearts need?
I don't know. I think all of that kind of only gets highlighted when results are going bad. Or when results are going good, then it's a great quality to have that he's a manager is quiet on the touchline and calm on the touchline, and then doesn't give much away in interviews and stuff like that. So when results are going great, that's the way it should be. And then as soon as it flips over, then it's like, oh well, he's not animated enough on the touchline, or he's not big enough a character for the job. So I don't really read too much into that. I think at the end of the day, it's results are what fans will be happy about. And I don't really think it matters how a manager's real, like how they act and stuff like that. I think at the end of the day, it is going to be results. And most of the clubs Derek McInnes has been at, his results have kind of spoken for themselves. He's went into clubs, brought them up, had Aberdeen challenging for season after season, goes into Kilmarnock, brings them up, stabilises them where they're like, if you went back a few years ago, Kilmarnock surviving and being in the bottom six was almost like the kind of like what they expected, and now he's made that into a bad season for them, just judged off his own success there. So I think his results will be the big, probably his strongest attribute really to be the manager.
You know, to go back to your previous question, Andrew, I mean, the final weekend, as I really would have it, is Kilmarnock entertaining Hearts next Sunday. So that would be a really fascinating scenario. What does Derek McInnes do in that situation? I suppose time will tell.
It certainly will. And you actually mentioned the interview with Chick Young. We were kind of almost teased before the game that we were going to get this big announcement that Derek McInnes was going to give Chick Young a story kind of after the game. And then, of course, he came out with that club-to-club contact line, which was a really strange one. Do you think, had Kilmarnock not won that game and not secured their future, that he might have said something a little different?
I don't know, actually. I think he maybe only did say anything at all because they came out and secured their future and made sure they were in the Premier League. Yeah, I think with Derek is he's a careful manager. He's careful with his career. He's said that in the past. He doesn't do anything rash. He thinks about everything deeply. He thinks about it carefully. I suspect that he will want that job. I certainly think it's one he's going to want to go and take on and prove that actually after his only real time at Aberdeen was, I think, fans getting a bit bored actually. It just got a bit stale, I think, was the feeling at the end. And I think he definitely will feel that he can go to Hearts and show that that's a level he can excel at again.
You mentioned that the Hearts fans can be quite famous for being hard to entertain. Will that maybe be something that Derek McInnes will kind of struggle with because he'll want to get back to basics, get Hearts defending properly again, get them back into the top six? Is entertaining football not high up on his agenda, Cillian?
I think every manager wants to have entertaining football, but there's no point having entertaining football and not winning. Obviously not every single week, but at the end of the day, like, fans want their team to be successful. And then if it gets to the point of, like you're kind of referencing the Aberdeen thing, that they kind of almost got bored, but they got bored while still being successful. Like in their terms, like it was success. And it just kind of, I think he has been a victim of his own success at some of the clubs where he's almost like you're saying, like he's exceeding what they should have done or what they were expecting. And then that suddenly becomes the norm. And then he's kind of stuck where, right, I'm winning. Now the next thing they want is they want to win in style. Everyone wants to do that. That's like the pinnacle of football, really.
And I think that maybe happened at Kilmarnock a bit as well this season. They've secured their safety with only 3 games to go. The team they played on Saturday, Dundee, they're still nervously looking over their shoulders. Is there a sense of panic at all, Stephen, or do you think they'll be okay?
If they beat Ross County, I think it's Wednesday, isn't it? I think if they win that, then they'll be home and host. I mean, that's a fascinating big game for them. Ross County are ropey away from home. Despite a brief resurgence, by and large, their record's very poor. Dundee, I think you would fancy at Dens Park. I think if they'll go 5 points clear of Ross County if they win that, will they? So with 1 game left, that would be that. I think that would then tee up this real winner-takes-all scenario with St Johnstone, who absolutely need to win. But I think they are at Tynecastle on Wednesday night. Is that right? So that's a really difficult one for them, particularly with Lawrence Shanklin coming back onto a game. I mean, St Johnstone are in just go for it territory, aren't they? They've just got to strip from the hip. They've just got to win games. They managed to eat that one out yesterday, keep themselves alive. They need to do the same at Tynecastle. If they do, then it will be a really difficult period for Ross County going into the final weekend. Dundee, they know what they've got to do. They've got to win and win tonight, and it's game over for them, and they can look forward to another season in the Premiership.
Well, that's it. After the win for St Johnstone against Ross County, that now makes it 7 defeats in a row for Ross County. Cillian, how does Don Cowie try and arrest that slide?
That's no idea. I don't think.
There's the answer.
I think that's what he'd love to know as well. It's the worst place to be in when you're down near the bottom and you just can't get a win. You can't see a win coming anywhere. There's no confidence. And then as soon as a team scores against you, you're thinking, "Here we go again," kind of thing. They're not scoring. They're not scoring many goals. I think they're the second worst goals scored, maybe. And I think Wednesday, I think Dundee will win the game. and it will come down to St Johnstone and Ross County. I think obviously we like to say the obvious. I think Wednesday night will kind of decide an awful lot. I'm hoping, for the sake of excitement, that it kind of does come down to the last game and St Johnstone are still in there. Like, somehow, I don't know how they're still in with it, getting that 11th spot. It kind of shows up a little bit Ross County's form as well, really.
Well, that's it. It feels like St Johnstone have been written off all season. They're still hanging on. If they were somehow to stay up, Stephen, would this be one of the greatest escapes that we've seen in the Premiership?
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, actually, the position you really, well, you don't want to be in 12th position, but 11th isn't a great deal more appealing. I just have a real feeling that David Martindale's Livingston are going to come charging over horizon, giving them a really pretty gruesome playoff situation. I fancy Livingston to overcome Partick Thistle over 2 games. And then you've got that pitch, you've got that team, that style of football you've got to go up against. If you're going into that with real lack of momentum, it's a really unpalatable situation to be in, I think.
Well, you mentioned the playoffs there. They served up no shortage of talking points across the leagues over the weekend. Airdrieonians will play Cove Rangers in the Championship playoff final as Rhys McCabe's side comfortably beat Stenhousemuir. Now, Airdrieonians have obviously had a really tough season, kind of saved by the situation at Hamilton Accies. Airdrie stuck by Rhys McCabe, though. Cillian, has that really paid off now?
I think so, yeah. I think the start they had was, they were always up against us from having such a poor kind of, not even start, like first half of the season, they looked completely doomed. Came into a bit of form, got themselves back up the table. And then probably without that form, it looked like Hamilton's points deduction probably still wouldn't have saved them. But they did. They got themselves back in with a chance, picked up some form, and I think that will prove too strong for Cove. I think Airdrie would have been, if you put the two of them against each other on their best days, Airdrie should win and would be expecting to win. And I think they've probably just hit form kind of, maybe not quite near the end of the season, but they finished much stronger than they started, and they'll have a bit of confidence going into the game. Cove maybe weren't probably expected to beat Queen of the South, I'm not sure. So I think I fancy Airdrie to come through in that.
And a little further down, Annan and East Fife will contest the League One playoff, while East Kilbride are poised to finally make that step up to League Two as they go into the second leg of their playoff with Bonnyrigg Rose with a 3-1 lead. In the SWPL, there were 2 massive games on Sunday. Hibs, the league leaders, drew 2-2 with chasers Glasgow City at Meadowbank, while Rangers beat Celtic 1-0 in the late kickoff. That means Hibs still have a 3-point lead with 2 games to go, holding back Rangers and City. Cillian, have you ever been involved in a title race so tight? And how nervous is it? We've talked a lot about the bottom, but how nervous will they be at the top?
Yeah, I've had a few. Had one in Cyprus. It came down to the very last game of the season. It was first against second. We ended up winning to win the league. And then in Poland had it two seasons in a row where we were last game of the season. If we won the league, and we drew at home. And then the next season, it was kind of out of our hands, but we still won our game. But Legia Warsaw won theirs. I think Hibs, if they go on and win the title, they'll definitely deserve it, because they'll have had to play the 3 title rivals in the last 3 games to go and win a league. It's kind of hard to argue against deserving that. I feel maybe Rangers are probably favourites, maybe. At home, they'll have a chance to be at home playing last game of the season to win the league. So it's definitely an exciting end to the season.
Certainly is, and that's another midweek card before the final games on Sunday. Right, that's all we've got time for today. Many thanks to Stephen McGowan and Cillian Sheridan for joining me. Remember, we're here with new episodes bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out by subscribing on BBC Sounds with push notifications turned on to alert you to every new show. Wednesday night is sure to be an absolute cracker, but where will the pendulum swing on the penultimate day? You'll have to join us to find out. Thank you for listening. Goodbye.
On BBC Sounds. From life aboard a Russian submarine to chairman of Hearts Football Club.
this stage, he was the hero.
But as his controversial decisions escalated,
they said, we're going to sack George. And I'm going, you can't do this.
how did Vladimir Romanov go from Hearts' saviour to a wanted man?
It caused a whole load of chaos and havoc.
Romanov, Tsar of Hearts. Listen now on BBC Sounds.